All right, Leslie. So tell me a little bit about how you got involved in tea houses and distributing tea.
Well, my journey into tea is ancestral. I had a beloved dad who was from the Caribbean. His side of the family was from St. Croix, Virgin Islands. And as a child, he grew up under some of the traditional English traditions, one being drinking tea. And tea was part of his daily life. I mean, my dad drank tea 3 times a day, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we also have a ancestral history of my grandfather, my dad's father, Joseph Allicks, was the first African-American man to work in Haviland, China manufacturing company. And so historically, not only did my dad drink tea on a very regular basis, we also had odds and end pieces of teacups and saucers and mismatched teacups and stuff where, the story is behind that my grandfather, whenever I guess there were cracks or discontinuation of certain patterns on the teacups and saucers, that the employees would be allowed to take some of those teacups and saucers and plates and stuff home. So it starts back with grandfather with, working in tea, cups and saucer manufacturing. And then my dad and his siblings, because of my grandparents, adopting the English tradition of drinking tea. I kind of fell into it by happenstance. Back in 2005, my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I would spend, as much time as I could with him and my mom at home and reminisce and tell stories and stuff. And it wasn't until having those types of conversations with my dad did I realize that I wanted to pay homage to him by opening up a tea house. And when I would talk to him about the possibility of opening up the tea house, he was interested and excited and wanted to know more information and tell me more. And so I pursued opening a tea house, which I eventually did open in 2007. But he had passed away in 2006 before I actually opened it up. But he knew that it was coming. He knew that I was really working on it. He knew I had a space and, all this stuff. He saw me ordering stuff, and it really excited him and encouraged me to continue on and open up a small business in his honor. It was named after my mom, Lola, because she was the surviving parent and she was spunky and exciting and funny, and and his name was Lester and he was much more conservative, and so Lester's tea house didn't have quite the ring as Lola's tea house, and so named it after her, even though there were pictures and everything of him, my dad, in the tea house to pay homage to him.
And so the light that you're using right now, is there somewhere you could put it up a little higher? Because I can see the reflection in your eyeglasses.
Let's see.
Or actually, yeah, I think that would be better.
Oh, that's so thick. How's that?
And move your head side to side and let me just see if I can see it. Yeah, that's better. Great. Because I can see the little ring in your glasses every time you
Oh yeah, I see it.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. I gotta keep my head down.
So the history of tea rooms goes all the way back to like the 19th and 20th century. You talked about opening Lola's Tea House, and now you have the tea experience. Why is it so important to kind of bring these tea houses to, 2021? Why is it important to have them today?
It is important to have them today because over time, and history has it that, everyone has basically become very scientific. Everyone is focusing on health and wellness and de-stressing and anxiety reduction and yoga and, all these
Hold
things to
on.
help.
I can still see the ring in your glasses.
Let me take them off. No, then I can't see you.
Well, if you want to just take them off, period. Well, I'm just asking you questions unless you want to keep them on. Can you turn it off? Let's see what it looks like with it off. Oop, I thought it just.
I dropped it.
Well, let's see if we don't. Maybe try to turn it off and see if we. Is it off?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let's keep it like this. Yeah, I think that's better. Because I can still see it moving around your glasses. Okay, so let's start that answer over. So, why are tea houses so important now, like in 2021, even though they've been around for centuries?
Tea houses are important now because tea houses have become kind of the central place where a lot of people get their information and knowledge and um, the ability to discern which tea types they actually like and which ones taste good and which ones don't based on their palate. And so you get all that opportunity offered through tea houses. With the possibilities and the advocacy of health and wellness, there's always that reach and understanding of the health benefits or the healthful benefits of tea, loose leaf tea. I have to disclaim that. There's always the healthful benefits of drinking tea for a number of reasons, for antioxidants, I think even for tooth decay prevention, and helps fortify teeth. And there's protective heart benefits to drinking tea. And then of course in wellness, to decrease stress and anxiety, digestion. And now we're finding out through science and research studies that certain teas are beneficial for arthritis, for digestion. And so I think it's good to have tea houses available in order for folks like me in the industry to share that information, to give people an opportunity to ask questions about it, and also more importantly, give people the opportunity, or potential customers, to taste the teas that they hear and read and know about.
And tea houses were also an avenue for Blacks to start their own business, just as you have. So I was doing a little research and learning about tea houses, how they would, Blacks would open their own tea houses, and then they would offer food all day to have people come in and stay. But they'd also be these places of community and places of sharing information. So how important was that for you to start your own business, but really start your own business in this legacy of tea houses?
You are absolutely right. The more affluent Blacks in the 30s and 40s were the tea house owners, the business owners, where they would actually offer tea services throughout the day. And then, to your point, in the evenings, kind of convert their tea houses into restaurants or places of meeting places. From what I understand, there's been, in the early 40s and 50s, a lot of the tea houses were meeting places for the affluent, the politicals, for conferences, or just for sharing information in large groups of people. And so, in the sense of community, nowadays, tea houses have remained that type of venue for not just for Black folks, but in general, for folks to kind of understand and know community. The tea house that I owned, Lola's Tea House, was just that. We had every kind of activity and function, and we had knitting bees and book clubs and book signings and open mic nights and poetry and tea parties with animated, life-size characters for the kids, and any kind of themed type of event we were available for, in addition to tea tastings, tea one-on-one educational sessions, tea and cheese pairings, tea and chocolate pairings. And so it was really a place and a space for people to really learn and appreciate tea.
And talk to me a little bit about your process about becoming an entrepreneur and opening up your tea house and, expanding it into the tea experience.
I never thought, to be honest, that I didn't think I had an entrepreneurial bone in my body, but that wasn't my purpose in opening up the business. It was really to pay homage to my dad, and because I knew that he was so excited and so proud of me to open up this tea house and this business in his honor, and to honor the tradition that he grew up with, of drinking tea. So I kind of fell into the tea business and being a small business owner in a probably a little bit of a different way than most people go into. Most people identify a need in small business and then create, a business around that need. And I guess to a certain degree, I kind of sort of, because the location where I actually decided to have the business, the brick and mortar space, there was really not a lot of like that kind of venue or space in that town. And so I thought, I chose that particular location for that reason. There were a lot of children, there were a lot of young people, there were a lot of young families who were tea drinkers. Once I did my demographic research, I realized that was probably, a good place to open a tea business for. So, we enjoyed, I think, so we were open in 2007, 2012, 5 or 6 years of being open in the brick and mortar space. And then in 2012, life had kind of presented itself to me where I just wasn't able to keep the business open. My mom, Lola, was living alone after my dad had passed away. And at that point, she was well in her 80s and was frailing to the point where I had to move my mom in with me. So I had an additional responsibility at home. The entire staff that I hired were all culinary arts students from Monroe College in New Rochelle. And they were all graduating and moving on to full-time chef work. And so I lost my entire staff in one fell swoop. And then, we survived the 2007, 2008 recession, struggled through it, but we survived and made it through. But then my lease was up in that same amount of time that I had to move my mom in, June, July of 2012. But the landlord decided to raise our rents in all the storefronts that he had owned. And I just couldn't manage the increase in the rent. I would have to rehire an entire new staff and train them. And I had to, focus and take some time to make sure that my mother was taken care of. And so I knew that I didn't want to walk away from the tea business altogether. I just knew that I couldn't manage the brick and mortar space any longer. And so I decided in 2012 to convert the business into a mobile tea party catering business where I would come to people's homes, their backyards, their living rooms, their dining rooms, or if it was a larger party, to a venue that they would probably want a tea themed party. So I was engaged to help host a fair amount of baby showers, bridal showers, birthday parties. And then it grew into an extension of parties to fundraisers for organizations, to even events that are hosted by various women's organizations had approached me to help cater their parties or their events as well. I was asked to guest speak and talk about tea and Tea 101. I was asked to help host tea tastings. And so the mobile tea party catering business, which is now called The Tea Experience, has kind of morphed. I thought it would really only be focused on party catering, but now it's kind of morphed into much more than what I've actually expected. And then with COVID, it really actually morphed, and we started doing virtual events I started hosting virtual events, but then I was also asked to host virtual events as well. And then with that came the request for, well, can you send us some tea while we're doing the tea tastings? And can you send us, and it became, a product line for me called Simplicity, where I now curate boxes, tea themed boxes with tea and goodies and accessories. And depending on, the theme of the party or the event, it could be, based on the colors of the organization or, whatever it is that they would want in that box. And then I would be responsible for curating those boxes and sending them out to all of the various guests. So thank goodness for COVID in that instance, where it actually kind of took off, helped me develop a new product line, and which took off, and to this day is still very, very, very popular and demanding.
Is there a window next to you?
Why, yes.
Is there like a shade you can pull down? Because half of your face is like lit up, the other half is not.
Sure. Let's see. That better?
Yes.
Okay,
great. Okay, so tell me about the process about sourcing teas and where you get them from.
As most people are aware, oops, this way. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
Crooked?
Yeah. So sit in the middle of the chair, or I guess this way, yeah. And then turn the chairs like this. The other way. Yep, there.
Okay. That better?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so tell me about your process about sourcing the teas and where you get them from.
I source the teas through wholesalers. Some are in the New York area, some are out of state, and one that I have a relationship with is based in Canada. And these wholesalers have relationships with the owners of tea plantations in China, in India, in Africa, and Japan. And the wholesalers, visit and travel to the countries to select the teas that they would like and order them from the plantations. Plantations process the tea leaves, package them up, send them in huge, huge bulk to the wholesalers. And then the wholesalers obviously sell the loose leaf tea to retailers like myself. And so depending on whatever teas, and then I get to pick from their list of what teas I want to purchase. They send those teas to me in bulk, 1 pound, 5 pound, 10 pound bags, and then I package.
And when we usually hear about people taking tea, oh my God, drinking tea, it's like, they're sick or, they're in bed and they want like a hot glass of tea. So now that it's become like different flavors and, different health, wealth and wellness and things like that, what are the benefits from your customers that they've been telling you about, their experience with tea?
A lot of my customers, they now better appreciate the value and benefit of drinking tea outside of being sick. They now understand and appreciate that there are some benefits to drinking tea. As I mentioned earlier, there's, the heart benefits and the antioxidant benefits and the anti-cancer benefits. And now we're finding it helps, certain teas help people to reduce their stress and anxiety. Some that have digestive issues, there's certain teas for them. And so I think my customers are now going beyond what just tastes good or what has a snappy name to the tea to, Leslie, I have this kind of issue, and do you have anything that works for indigestion? Do you have anything you can recommend? I had a lady said that her baby was colicky, and did I have a recommendation for her for the baby? And historically, and again, this is, I don't know if it's a factual thing, but I remember as a young child, my grandmother actually putting chamomile tea, not a lot, a little bit of chamomile tea into milk in a baby's bottle for colickiness, and the baby would like fall right off to sleep and would like just get very comfortable and calm, and baby would go right off to sleep. So, there's things that you can do, with teas that are beneficial that you just never really realize. Like, everybody likes chamomile tea, tastes good, but there is that calming, anti-anxiety effect, decreasing stress kind of, and even just the process of drinking tea kind of brings you down a little bit and makes you kind of focus on the tea and slows you down, because you kind of have to sip tea, and so even just the act of drinking the tea itself is helpful and beneficial.
And you talked a little bit earlier about the historical reference for you specifically in your family and how you got into tea. How do you think that's, pushed you mentally into, becoming this entrepreneur and developing this tea company from your family's legacy?
Well, I'm the first entrepreneur, I guess, in the family. And I'm definitely the first entrepreneur in the family who has a business that's focused on tea. And it's actually brought in a number of my other family members who have similar memory from their parents or my aunts and uncles into the whole tea business. I have an older cousin who makes the best scones on the planet. And it encouraged her and sparked her to kind of start a business for herself in making scones. She won't give anybody the recipe, but she, has developed her own business in scones. And so I also, use her business to business, utilize her scones during our afternoon teas or high teas that I help host, for tea parties and stuff. And then I have another cousin who, what's her thing? It's not coffee. Chicory. Chicory is an herb that tastes like coffee, but it's really technically an herb. You boil it, technically a tea. If it's not really officially from my industry's perspective, is it a tea? But because people boil it in hot water and, they call it a tea. And so she has done some research and realized that chicory is a good transition for those folks who are really heavy coffee drinkers who want to kind of transition into drinking tea, that they realize that chicory is kind of the middle ground kind of beverage, hot beverage that people smells a little bit like coffee, tastes a little bit like coffee, helps them kind of move and transition into drinking tea, or once they find a particular tea that they enjoy, that they can transition from chicory to tea. So there has been some spark and excitement and invention within the family based on, our family history and what I've done so far with the tea business. It's kind of encouraged an extension to some of my family members.
That's great. Okay. And then I have two more questions for you. So walk me through, okay, first tell me what your favorite tea is that you have. And then walk me through the process. Like, if we were in the kitchen, walk me through the process of making your favorite tea.
I don't really have a favorite. My favorites are seasonal. So depending on the season is when I go to my favorite tea. So now that we're in the fall, going into winter, my favorite tea right now, well, I have two, is chai tea with some warm whipped milk and a little honey. And then the other, my newest love, is something called Earl Grey cream. It's Earl Grey tea that has a little bit of, it's oil of bergamot, orangey kind of scent and flavor to it. But now this Earl Grey cream has vanilla tea blended in with it. And so again, with a little bit of half and half, or a little warm whipped milk, and a little honey, Earl Grey cream and chai are my two favorites. If I'm in the summer months, I'm into the lighter teas, the light green teas, the white teas even, that I can make iced tea out of. And then in the spring, I kind of, waver depending on how I'm feeling. I try to make sure that I get an herbal tea in there every now and again. There's an African, they call it Rooibos. It's for the Caribbean folks, it's bush tea. It's made actually not from a tea leaf, but the bark of a reddish brown looking tea tree that's grown in Africa. And they, shave it down, into tea like flakes. And then they blend it. You can drink it plain, but then they blend it with dried fruits and herbs. And that really tastes good, maybe in like the spring. So depending on the season is my favorite. It depends on what my favorite choice will be. In preparing tea, I have a whole tea one-on-one session trying to teach folks how to properly prepare tea. And the biggest thing that I could suggest when preparing tea is to not boil the water. The water doesn't have to be a roving, raging, boiling water if you're drinking loose leaf tea. You can just to a simmer with a little bubbles in the water would be helpful. At that temperature, it's like 200, and I don't know if anybody sticks a thermometer in their water, but 200, 212 degrees, but not a raging boil, because that boiling water burns the tea leaves and makes the tea taste bitter. The other thing I do when I prepare my tea is I swish a little hot water in the cup or the mug before I put my loose leaf tea in there, just to kind of warm the cup up and get prepared, get the leaves kind of prepared for the cup, or the cup prepared for the tea. And so I just swish a little hot water in the cup before I, submerge my tea leaves in. And then the other suggestion or tip that I would recommend is, and I've seen people do it with tea bags, and I'm assuming that they do it with loose leaf tea as well, is once, each tea type, there's 4 different tea types. Each tea type has its own brewing or steeping time. And depending on the tea type, you could be brewing your tea for 1 to 3 minutes, 2 to 3 to 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, depending on the type of tea that you're drinking. What I've noticed and what I recommend and what I do is that once that time, and I do have a timer, once that timer is up, 1 to 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, I remove the loose leaf tea leaves out of the cup. Because again, if you leave the tea leaves or the tea bag in there while you're sipping, it makes the tea taste very bitter. I've had so many people who have, in my tea tastings, I offer them a sample of it. They love it. They buy it. They take it home. And then they call me and complain that it doesn't taste the way I made it or the way they had it when I gave it to them. And more times than not, it's because they boiled the water and burned the leaves, or they left the tea leaves in the cup too long. So those are my 2 tips. Those are my tips.
And that is really it. Those are all of my questions. Did I miss anything? Did I leave out anything, you think?
Not at all.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I don't, it's a folklore. I'm not sure if it's really true, but in my research, the earlier days of tea ceremonies and African Americans seems to kind of date back to slavery. In New Orleans, believe it or not. Apparently there was a more sophisticated population of Black slaves, African slaves in New Orleans, who were enslaved by masters who had plantations and stuff, who obviously were very affluent themselves. And the Africans, the enslaved, developed their own tea ceremony somewhere around Valentine's Day. It looks as if the white plantation or the white slave owners would host a Valentine's Day type event on, February 14th or somewhere around there, in the home. And then February 15th, whatever was left over, or if there were any cracked teacups or anything, the enslaved would basically inherit, or the master would give them the cracked tea cups and saucers and whatever was left over from a meal or whatever they had the day before. And the story is, the theory, the research that I've done behind it is that the tea ceremonies that the enslaved actually incorporated the day after Valentine's Day was that the women would take the teacup, give it to the man of the house. The man of the house would walk around where all the slaves would live and offer a teacup to them to kind of signal and let them know that his house or his household, his home, was going to be offering a tea ceremony event that day. And so we have developed our own kind of tea ceremony, it seems, in New Orleans and in the enslaved, and it kind of evolved over time of, gatherings around tea, and usually around the 15th of February. It's a theory, can't really confirm it, but every kind of research that I've done all seem to kind of share that same kind of story. So, I don't know.
Well, that's
Every
great.
Question, factual, I don't know, but
And you know why I love it? Because my birthday is February 15th.
Okay, then it must be true then.
It's true.
It is. That's it. It's true.
Do you have any articles about that? Like, where did you see that?
Where did I see it? I do. I have.
Could you send that to me?
Yeah.
And also say your last name for me when I check.
Allicks.
Allicks. Okay.
Like the boy's name, but spelled a little differently.
And if you have like any pictures that you want to share of like Lola's tea room, or any of the experiences, like the tea tastings that you have, like I'll take any and all pictures that you want to send over so we can include them as well.
Okie dokie.
Otherwise, I think we are all set. And the more pictures, the better. So
I actually have a little YouTube video. I gotta find it.
Oh yes, if you have that too, we'll take that too.
Of one night when we had open mic night, and I don't know whatever happened to that girl. Do you know who Kyra Pole is?
Mm-mm.
She was a Grace member. Her family were members of Grace, but she was an intern at the Griot a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was her project. And she basically followed me around for a couple days in the tea house, and then I invited her back for open mic or poetry night, and she did brought a video team and cameras and stuff, and they did a full
yeah, if you have any video, we'll take all of your pictures, anything you've been doing over the pandemic, pictures of you preparing teas, your boxes, any of that stuff. Send it over to me.
Okay, I will.
Perfect. Well, that's all I got. You have a great weekend.
Yes, ma'am. It finally stopped raining, and I had to pull
know.
the shade down because the sun came out after the torrential rains.